There's one gun that made me say, oh my god, this is amazing the first time I shot it. I think it's the brand new Meta. And then there's another gun that really got impacted pretty hard, and trust me, it's not the SCW10. We're going to talk about both of these a little later, but for now, let's talk about the least interesting changes, because some of the guns weren't really affected that much at all. And the first gun that literally basically didn't change at all was the AK-205. This thing is a pea shooter. What I mean by pea shooter is it requires a lot of bullets, kind of like the SL9. But this is the SL9 for carbines. It sucks up close because it has a slow rate of fire, and it does not have a lot of recoil. With the Season 2 adjustments, they said they adjusted the recoil behavior to better match the expectation of a 5.45 by 39 millimeter weapon. And after using it a bunch, I didn't see any change at all. It still sucks up close, hip fire is not very good, and you're not going to beat very many guns up close. And when you go at range, you have to be perfect. It's not hard to maintain the accuracy of this gun. It doesn't have much recoil, but it still requires a bunch of shots to kill at range. So if you're facing against an assault rifle or anything within that 40 to 60 meter range, you're probably going to get outgunned. And then anything past like 70 meters, this thing still needs a bunch of bullets, and most of the people past 70 meters have a DMR or a sniper rifle. So it doesn't really have a good place to shine, and I don't think these changes, which are very minimal, made any big changes on this weapon. Now, the next set of guns are going to be grouped together. I will talk about them a little bit individually, but these groups of assault rifles had an adjustment that says reduce recoil randomness, improve consistency and effectiveness at longer ranges. They made assault rifles more assault rifles, medium to long range, extending that long range portion of it. All of these guns got a little bit of adjustments, nothing major, but it did change the handling characteristics a little bit. For example, the M433. This is a gun that I actually have mastered. I've used it extensively. It's the first gun that I used, and I just basically stuck with it for the entire first portion of Battlefield 6. This gun has a tendency to go up and to the right, meaning that you have to pull down and to the left. But pre-patch, it had a little bit of extra randomness built in, meaning if you ever used this gun and you were pulling down to the left, you would notice that at some point it would jump too far to the left and have to pull back right. It had a little bit more sway under consistent fire. So if you held in full auto, you would notice that it would go up and to the right and then bump to the left just a little bit for a second and then back to up and to the right. That has been reduced significantly. So now it's more consistently up and to the right. So if you're good at managing the recoil, this gun still has basically the same amount of recoil. It's a little bit better and easier to control because the randomness has been reduced. This is the biggest impact out of all four of these assault rifles, and the B36 is the next. The B36 wasn't crazy up and left or up and right, but it did have a much more pronounced bounce back and forth. It was mainly vertical, mainly up, but it did have a slight sway left and right to where full autoing this gun was a little bit more difficult. You were better off just kind of burst firing at ranges 50 to 60 meters plus. Now it's a lot more consistently vertical. It has a little bit less of that left and right sway while fully auto firing. It's still better to burst fire, but now it's just a little bit more accurate on center when you're in full auto. And again, this is all stuff that you notice 50 plus meters. You don't notice it up close. The SOAR 556. This is a gun that I was just starting to use. I have it about level 20, and I was fairly impressed. It's a good overall gun, not the fastest rate of fire, not the most recoil, not the most accurate, not the most anything, but a good blend of everything. And the changes didn't impact this gun very much to where I could tell. And this is a gun that I was using very heavily like a week ago, right? So it's fresh in my mind, and going back and playing a couple games with this, I didn't notice much, to be very honest with you. Very similarly, it doesn't have as much side-to-side bounce in terms of randomness. This one was more vertical with a little bit of like randomness to the right, and it's not as random, more vertical. The L85 is kind of more of the same. This gun was definitely just a little bit more up and down, a little bit more vertical movement. It already had less randomness because it has a lower rate of fire and it uses a little bit smaller round. So it wasn't bad at all, the recoil doesn't seem to have changed very much at all. In reality, the only thing that I noticed while using the L85 is it seems to have a slightly bigger jump on first shot recoil, but again, it's about feel. And just so you guys are aware, I'm not gonna go through any of like the random stats and all that stuff, because numbers are one thing and they kind of give you an idea of what can happen, but in reality, a lot of this stuff is based on feel. The feel of the gun is significantly way more important than the actual statistic, because one gun could potentially be the meta based on numbers, having a higher firepower and a lower TTK, but in reality, most of those times, those guns have more recoil and they're a little bit more difficult to use. Yes, if you learn them, you can be better with them, but they have less potential based on your skill level. So I personally always like to judge a weapon off of its feel. I like to use all of them. I like to try different attachments because some attachments make a huge difference. And one of those is now going to be the compensated brake. Many people didn't use them because of in-world spotting, but the reduction in distance makes the compensated brake very, very effective. I will have a separate video on that attachment because it is now 100% worth it, and it makes a very big impact on recoil, more than some suppressors. Obviously, you're going to show up, but that is a new attachment that is viable. If you guys want to check it out, definitely give it a shot. I will be making a more detailed video about this later on. Now let's move on to the other two guns that did not receive very much changes at all. And those are the LMGs, the L110 and the M123K. The L110 is almost mastered for me. I've used it quite a bit. In reality, what it says is it reduces recoil to reinforce the handling difference between belt-fed machine guns and assault rifles. Belt-fed machine guns have large magazines. They are meant for continuous non-stop fire. They are meant to be shot full auto. Assault rifles have a little bit more randomness, a little bit more recoil whenever you actually shoot them full auto, and the L110 is a great example. This had a little bit more recoil and an initial first shot recoil, but now it's actually better at sustained fire. You get a little jump on the first shot, and then after that, it's basically in a line. So it's reduced the overall recoil buildup over time. If you haven't used this gun or if you liked it, it's not much different, but it is a little bit more accurate at range, and it is a little bit easier to keep sustained fire, which is what belt-fed machine guns are for. The M123K, on the other hand, has similar effects. The first shot recoil is actually, from what I can feel, a little bit less, and the sustained fire is significantly more improved because the M123 has a faster fire rate than the M110. So what would happen is the recoil buildup would pull slightly up and to the right. It would go up first, and then you'd kind of feel it drifting off to the right. Now, when it would start drifting off to the right, it kind of maintains and holds. It can still get away from you if you're not careful and you're not counteracting the recoil, but it's significantly easier to counteract that recoil now. It has less buildup under fully automatic fire, which is a good thing. I think both of these improvements, they're very subtle, they're not impactful, they don't make these guns the meta like the other one that we're going to talk about later, but they do actually make an improvement in sustained fire, which is exactly what they were going for. I think they did a good job with these changes, making them subtle, impactful. You can notice it, but not overly done over the top. Hey, the DB12 is a shotgun, and I don't ever use shotgun, so we're just gonna skip that one because I don't have any viable information. Kind of like the LMR-27. This is a DMR, a single fire, long range rifle. I don't use these too much. It doesn't fit into my play style, but I did test it out. I personally don't like 4-shot DMRs. They fire too slow for the fact that they take 4 shots to kill. An assault rifle that has 25 damage at range is significantly faster in killing than a DMR. A DMR needs to be stronger than a 4-shot assault rifle. It needs to be either 2 or 3 shots, somewhere between a long-range assault rifle and a sniper. A sniper is 1 to 2 kills, 1 to 2 shots, depending on where you hit it. A DMR can't be 1 shot, but it literally needs to be 2 or 3. Any DMR that I've enjoyed over the course of time, which is not many, is a 2 to 3 shot kill. They have to be. It needs to be faster than an assault rifle at range. And this lines up with that a little bit more often. I don't use DMRs very much, like I said, but I found myself getting 2 to 3 shot kills, especially when mixing in a headshot, within medium ranges. I wasn't in an environment to play super long ranges, and I was only using it for a few kills, but I got a bunch of 3-shot kills. It felt satisfying, and I was able to outdo assault rifles and SMGs in certain ranges when I had the tactical advantage, when I was in a good position. So I don't use DMRs very much, but I enjoyed using this LMR 27 for the time being, just simply because it ended up working. If you can get DMRs all to have 3-shot kills, they will be a lot better because they can outdo assault rifles at distance. So not a bad change at all. Just a little bit more power is what they said. They increased the damage at close to mid ranges to better reward accurate headshots, and I genuinely feel like that was achieved. Subtle, not OP, but it did make a difference. Now let's talk SMGs, the meta in Battlefield 6. Not really, but they are a lot more powerful. Honestly, I play assault rifles most of the time, and I've actually been using SMGs and assault rifles about 50-50. Comparatively speaking to other games, which means that the SMGs are very, very strong. The SCW-10 is probably the strongest. It was literally like a fast-moving assault rifle with a small clip, and they definitely nerfed the crap out of it. It's not the strongest nerf, in my opinion. There's another one that I will talk about immediately after this, but the SCW-10 says it has increased recoil to reduce effectiveness at range and reinforce its close quarters role. What I felt was a pretty substantial change to the long range performance. It has a lot more kick to be in line with the damage profile. This is the most damaging SMG, and now it has recoil to match the damage profile. You kind of have to burst fire at range now. You can still hit your shots, but it is a lot more tricky to control this weapon at range. And the footage you're seeing in front of you is a great example. Whereas before, I would have been able to get this in 1 or 2 shots and just be able to knock this person out, but not anymore. It takes more effort to keep it in line when you're getting to these distances. And I believe this was around 80-ish meters. So sub 50 meters, you don't notice too much of a difference. It's basically the same, but after that 50 plus meters, which is when ARs are really viable, this is not as viable anymore. Can you do it? Yes. Is it the best option? Not anymore. Sticking with close to medium range, under 50 meters, this thing is still 100% a beast, but not as it was before. Now, the gun that I do feel was nerfed in the way that was not intended was actually the PW7. This gun and the USG90 both had adjusted recoil behavior to improve effectiveness at range while slightly increasing handling difficulty up close. With the USG90, essentially, I feel like this weapon got better. It has less recoil buildup with a slightly larger first shot recoil, but overall, it has less recoil buildup over the course of time if you continue sustaining fire. The PW7, although these two were supposed to have the same type of adjustments, it didn't work out the same. The PW7 I've never really liked as a weapon, the MP7, because it was more or less a pea shooter in my eyes. It would take a lot of bullets to do damage, and there was just other tools for the job. But in this one, it had such a small first shot recoil and so accurate that I was just able to put people down a lot faster because I wasn't missing shots, even though it took an extra shot or two. I don't know if they intended for this to happen, but the first shot recoil, which is that increase handling difficulty up close portion of it, really affects this weapon at the long range. That first shot recoil makes the burst firing less viable. So you basically have to sustain fire to keep it accurate over time, because if you burst, that first shot kicks it out of line, so it's now less accurate at range and more accurate whenever you sustain fire, because now you can adjust. The buildup after the initial first shot recoil isn't much larger than it was before, but now with that extra first shot recoil, it makes it it just makes it a little bit more difficult to handle. You have to relearn this gun. This, I think, is the gun that received the biggest nerf, and it wasn't even intended, because before, it fires small rounds and it fires fast. So you have a little bit of first shot recoil, but not a lot, and you do not have sustained increase while you full auto. Now it has one of the two, and it affects it, because when you get to ranges, you literally have to burst fire, and it makes it a lot more difficult to just hit those shots. The recovery from that first shot recoil happens a lot more slowly, and it's a little bit larger. I believe that this is the most nerfed weapon in all of the adjustments that they've made. It's a weapon I liked, it's a weapon I've used a lot, and I was very quick to notice the differences, and to be honest, it's not the same. But the USG90, as mentioned before, I didn't actually like it because you can't put any vertical grips, or you can't put any grips on it just based on the design of the gun. And now it doesn't need it. It feels a lot more controlled with a lot more recoil buildup. So if any of you did not like the USG90, go ahead and give it a go. It's a little bit different now. Also, just a heads up, for any of you guys that may have watched other creators' input on weapon changes, and they basically just said that it's a laser beam, it's a laser beam, it's a laser beam, it's a laser beam. These players have gotten to the point where they're good. Like, it's not a bad thing. They're really good. It's just controlling recoil becomes a little bit easier and less pronounced. Therefore, they can no longer notice the subtle differences in these things. There are differences. Not everything is a laser beam. There is a difference, and you can feel it. It's just after a certain amount of playtime, you just get used to it and you forget the nuances. So if you've seen any reviews like that, do understand that that's not gonna apply the same way to you, and you may actually notice some weapon differences if you take the time to actually play with them instead of just showing them off in a gun range. Nerfed carbines. Increase recoil to limit effectiveness at range and better align with its close range performance. The SG553. This gun, originally pre-patch, was actually very good. Pretty fast TTK, nice hip fire accuracy. It felt really good to use. It didn't have a bunch of recoil. It had a little bit, but it was all kind of vertical. Now, after the patch, it has a noticeable randomness after 40 plus meters. So that thing that they took away from the assault rifles, they kind of added it here. The assault rifles had more randomness at range, meaning if it pulls up to the right, like the M433, you kind of got to kick it back to the left, and sometimes you'd be pulled off to the left. That never happened with the SG553. It was basically straight up and down. You pull down a little bit to keep the recoil from getting out of hand, and it was basically a laser beam. Now, it has a little bit of that assault rifle side to side, which most carbines don't actually have. Is it still a good gun? Yes. It still beats people up close? Yes. Now you have to burst fire a little bit more. And also, it's a little bit more difficult to sustain fire over about 40 meters. The SOAR 300 SC is very, very similar. They adjusted recoil to remain competitive alongside assault rifles, and I believe that's the case because this gun had a lot more randomness than the SG553. It was a lot more in line with the vertical kind of left and right movement, and it's kind of climbing up a ladder side to side. It doesn't do that as much anymore. The recoil pattern, although still the same level of intensity, it has the same overall recoil in terms of the movement when it kicks. It's definitely less right, left, right, left, right, left as the bullets go through, and it's kind of just more vertical. It's not much of a difference, but it is enough to make it a little bit more accurate at range, which is a good thing. So it doesn't clearly state whether this is a buff or a nerf, and I truly believe that this is more of an adjustment because it's basically the same. It just has a little bit less randomness, and it's clear to tell. The PW5 and the SGX both had increased recoil to make them slightly harder to control and less precise at long ranges. And with both of these guns, you're gonna see the same effect, so I'm gonna talk about them together. The PW5 slightly has a little bit bigger recoil, and it kind of falls back a little bit more after you finish burst firing. So the PW5 has a slight increase in vertical recoil under sustained fire, and it takes a little bit longer for those sights to fall back into place. It's subtle. It's very subtle. It just happens to be the gun that I was using before Season 2 came live, and it was the first gun that I used afterwards. So I noticed it, but it's a small amount. You just have to control your recoil a little bit more aggressively, but I don't think you have to play any differently. The same thing with the SGX, except it's a little bit different. So with the PW5, it got a little bit more increase in vertical recoil. The SGX didn't get increased vertical recoil. I don't think it kicks upwards any more than it did, but it does have a slight bit more randomness. The SGX was a small amount, kind of mimicking the M433 with a little bit of the up and right movement. And now it has a little bit of the up and right movement with a slight variation in there to where it kind of moves a little left on you sometimes. It's not much, it's very subtle, and anyone that's used this gun a lot is going to notice the difference, and you're going to get used to it very, very quickly. But it did change just enough to make it to where you have to burst and you cannot full auto at distance. Some people can still full auto at distance, but in reality, you're gonna wanna burst, and that'll keep you more accurate, more in line. But these two were very minor changes, and I didn't notice it too much. Now, the M277. This gun is a 20 round mag, which means it has a powerful round and a pretty substantial amount of recoil. They reduced the recoil here to improve the effectiveness at range. And I literally think that is as literal as it gets. I believe they reduced the first shot recoil because the recoil buildup and pattern over time seems to be exactly the same. It's a little bit more friendly to burst fire now because that first shot recoil feels to have been reduced a little bit. So the initial bump on the first bullet is a little bit less, but everything else after that seems the same. The randomness, the little bit of side to side movement in terms of the actual recoil buildup under sustained fire is pretty much all of the same. I really do think that with this one, they just reduced the first shot recoil ever so slightly. The M417A2 reduced recoil randomness to ensure they remain competitive relative to assault rifles. This gun is a little bit different because I feel like the M417 compared to the M277 had more actual recoil. And now there's a noticeable decrease in the sustained fire recoil. I feel like the M417 had more recoil and more buildup than the M277. Now I feel like the M417 has less buildup. Still about the same first shot recoil, but burst firing and sustained firing with this gun is a lot better now than it was before. I believe it's really, really close to the 277, and if you guys like the 277, give the M417 a shot because they're very, very close to one another. I believe that they're within the same range, and they perform probably a little bit too similarly now. Now, the rate of fire is a little bit different, but I do think that the M417 is a little bit more accurate. Now we're going to talk about literally the brand new meta. I'm not kidding when I told you that the first time I shot this gun, I went, oh my God, this is the business. I'm going to be using this gun for the near future because it impressed me actually firing this down. Hands down, the QBZ192 is the most improved weapon of this patch. It has the most noticeable reduction in recoil. The recoil is straight up vertical. It's very small. It's easy to burst fire. It recovers very quickly from bursting, and it has less sustained recoil over time. It is amazing how impactful this is. If you're listening to this, look at the screen real quick and just watch this footage. I haven't used the QBZ that much. It's about level 20, which most of my guns are, but I did it a while ago and I remembered not much about this gun. It did not impress me. It didn't feel too good. It was kind of just middle of the road. No, sir, not anymore. It has a good fire rate. It has great recoil right now. I think they went too far with this gun, and that is a good thing. Use the freaking QBZ. This thing is now amazing. It is butter smooth. It is easy to use. And if any gun out of any of them is a laser beam, it is now this one. If you guys enjoyed this update and breakdown of all the weapon changes of Battlefield 6 Season 2, go ahead, give this a like, give it a sub if you want to see more videos just like this. I also have a full map breakdown where I talk about the new map Contaminated and break down all of the modes and kind of what I think about it. If you want to see a detailed video just like that, go ahead and click on this video right here.